2:10 a.m., October 27, 2025. A Panzer S-1 crew stationed at Domodedovo Air Base was firing continuously at incoming Ukrainian drones. Everything seemed routine until the targeting screen flickered a warning and the situation flipped upside down. Missiles were launched steadily every 3 seconds, yet the number of targets did not decrease. The defense quickly turned into a desperate war of attrition. With the remaining ammunition, they had exactly 75 seconds before the outer defense ring would be breached. The reason was simple: the Russians were being deceived. A total of 193 targets were inbound, but 154 of them were decoys, programmed to make the Panzer exhaust its missile stockpile. The real threat was the 39 Lutai drones silently hidden among the decoys. They were protected by an electronic warfare trick known as ghost mode. Each decoy transmitted its radar position with a delay of about 3.6 seconds. As a result, the Panzer's million-dollar missiles hit empty air, striking the spot where the drones had passed a few seconds earlier. The crew saw 34 bright explosions and believed they had scored hits, but in reality, for every ghost shot down, 5 real drones slipped through the defense. This trap was only possible because of a mistake made 40 minutes earlier. That drone swarm had to pass through Moscow's first layer of air defense, the S-400 system. Because the S-400's Doppler filter excluded ground clutter, it classified low-flying objects, just 6 meters above the ground, as non-threats. As a result, the system detected the entire swarm, but never fired a single missile. 2:11 a.m., the Panzer crew kept firing their last rounds at the ghosts, completely unaware that the real attackers had already slipped through and were preparing to strike. 20 miles away, at Zhukovsky Air Base, the real assault began. The entire operation was a meticulously planned 2-pronged attack, the work of a cold, calculating mind. The 154 decoys had one purpose: to fly at an altitude of 150 meters and appear brightly on Russian radar, drawing all defensive fire. Their flight paths were deliberately designed to attract attention and pull every Russian radar and missile skyward. Meanwhile, the 39 real drones flew just above the ground. At 2:12 a.m., they entered their final phase. Flying barely 6 meters above the surface, hidden in thick fog and the low hills surrounding the Zhukovsky forests, they were nearly invisible. Each drone was equipped with AI and a unique route consisting of more than a dozen waypoints, allowing them to maneuver like self-guided cruise missiles, weaving through every gap in Russia's air defense network. By 2:15 a.m., the Panzer battery at Domodedovo was no longer fighting. It had become the victim of an aerial trap. The 154 decoys flew in looping wave patterns, forcing the targeting computer to process non-stop until it was completely overloaded. Simply put, it was a flying data storm. The Panzer's computer was flooded with so much garbage data that it could no longer distinguish real threats. The purpose of this strike was not to destroy the Panzer, but to blind it, to keep it so occupied that it would ignore what was happening over Zhukovsky. When a $15 million air defense system turned into a useless chunk of metal, the 39 lethal drones were already advancing toward their targets, unopposed. At 2:25 a.m., Russian commanders at Zhukovsky finally realized they had been deceived from the start. The decoy swarm was merely a distraction. Once the Panzer was neutralized, Russia reacted instinctively by unleashing its real power. 2 Su-35 fighters, worth $80 million, were scrambled with a single mission: hunt and destroy. But their radars were blinded by fog and ground interference, forcing the pilots to switch to heat-seeking missiles. The problem was that the 39 real drones no longer emitted heat. Their engines had been shut down. Instead of charging forward, each drone hid in pre-designated spots: bushes, shallow trenches, or abandoned drainage pipes around Zhukovsky. With their engines off, they cooled down and became invisible lumps of metal buried in the mud. Scanning for them with infrared in those conditions was like searching for a needle at the bottom of the sea. The 2 expensive fighters were now completely useless, defeated by a simple tactic. By 2:40 a.m., with the aircraft seeing nothing and the air defense network in chaos, Russia deployed its final measure: 500 Spetsnaz special forces. They surrounded the forest near Zhukovsky, dividing it into search grids, planting acoustic sensors to detect even the faintest sound. They were not radars or computers. They were hunters, trained to stalk in the dark. Ukraine's plan had been flawless against machines, but now they faced men. The silent drones were trapped inside a tightening steel net. Ukrainian commanders monitored the battle on their screens, facing a single choice: activate immediately and accept casualties, or wait and let each drone be found and destroyed. 2:50 a.m., the decision was made. No more waiting. An encrypted signal from Kiev was sent out. Execute. All units. Now. Instantly, the forest erupted in flames. The roar of 39 engines tore through the fog, like a bell summoning the Spetsnaz into the hunt. Reacting like startled predators, the entire Russian Spetsnaz unit opened fire toward the source of the sound. Muzzle flashes tore through the foggy night. The hunt turned into a bloody, chaotic close-quarters firefight. 7 drones were shredded before they could even take off. 5 more were hit just as they cleared the treetops, crashing down like flaming comets. In just 90 seconds, 12 drones, nearly 1/3 of the entire strike group, were reduced to charred wreckage. The Spetsnaz fought like demons, inflicting heavy losses. But they too were being dragged into a nightmare. For every drone they destroyed, 2 more rose from a different direction. The same fog that had blinded them now became Ukraine's shield. The remaining 27 drones, battered but still functional, escaped the forest and climbed into the sky. At that moment, the Russians believed they had won, that the attack had been stopped. But they were wrong. While Russian soldiers were still firing into the mist, the true target, a massive fuel depot at the center of Zhukovsky Air Base, stood completely unguarded. It was being watched in real time through high-definition imagery, streamed directly from Russia's own hacked security cameras. Russia had won the battle, but Ukraine was about to win the war. 2:52 a.m. Zhukovsky Air Base remained quiet, an island of calm amid the storm. While the Spetsnaz were still hunting in the fog, airport workers sipped coffee. One controller might have even been scrolling through TikTok. No one knew that 27 surviving drones were roaring out of the forest, converging on the airfield from multiple directions. This time they weren't hiding. All engines were pushed to full throttle. 43 seconds to impact. On the hacked Russian security feed, Ukrainian commanders watched the tranquil scene, a still frame before the storm. And then they smiled. This wasn't just an attack. It was a hammer blow delivered at nearly 200 kilometers per hour. Russia thought it was over. Ukraine was about to execute the final phase of its plan. When the first drone slammed into the main aircraft fuel reservoir, the explosion was far from a simple boom. Each drone carried a 50-kilogram shaped charge, designed not to detonate outward, but to pierce. On impact, it unleashed a jet of molten copper, moving at 16,000 miles per hour, slicing through steel like a razor blade. That jet punched through the reinforced shell and ignited the fuel inside. Thousands of gallons of jet fuel erupted, forming a colossal fireball that lit up the entire sky. The blast generated a localized electromagnetic pulse, a mini EMP, that knocked out every electronic device within roughly 100 meters. Radar, communications, controls, everything went dark. There was no ear-splitting bang, only the air being ripped apart. The ground tremored like a magnitude for quake. Then, absolute silence. Within seconds, the entire Zhukovsky military base was plunged into darkness. All displays, all signal lights, every radar died. A modern airfield became a blackened junkyard. But that was only the beginning. The strike did more than destroy the fuel reservoir. It collapsed the power and command network, spreading through the airbase like a virus. The command chain was severed. Survivors tried to call over satellite phones, but heard only static. Command officers lost their links and could not issue orders or communicate. And Ukraine did not stop. Zhukovsky was not the final objective, only the opening shot of Phase 2. When intelligence confirmed the base had lost contact, Kiev ordered the next operation activated. Over the next 72 hours, Moscow's air response capability around the capital was effectively nil. The skies were wide open, and Ukraine treated that as an invitation. A second swarm of 50 Lutai drones launched from Sumy. The target was no longer the airfield, but the exposed supply convoys on the highway into Moscow, wide open with no air cover. At the same time, Ukraine's HIMARS batteries fired pre-approved targets relentlessly, ignoring counter-battery radar. S-400 crews finally saw everything unfolding on their screens. They saw the HIMARS launches, they saw the second drone swarm, but they received no orders from an active command center. In practice, and by the rules, they could not act on their own. The result was supply lines set alight. It was like watching thieves on your security cameras while being tied to a chair. You see it all, but are powerless to stop it. Over the following 48 hours, Moscow scrambled to contain the damage, but a 5-mile column of black smoke could not be hidden. OSINT satellite imagery confirmed heavy losses. State media was mostly silent about the incident in the Bryansk region. The clearest evidence was flight tracking data. More than 100 international flights were canceled as Domodedovo and Zhukovsky turned into smoky parking lots. But beyond burning fuel and canceled flights lay the strategic meaning. The operation proved that a concrete fortress protected by billion-dollar radar could be undone by a few dozen $5,000 drones if the timing was right. Timing mattered because at the same moment a new administration in Washington threatened to cut aid. This strike was how Ukraine demonstrated it could fight and win on its own. The message to NATO was that the investment was working. The message to Putin ahead of Geneva talks was that his position was weaker than he believed. He entered the negotiating room like a king, but now looked like the weaker party. If you were a Russian commander, what would you do to prevent the enemy's next raids? Leave your best strategic ideas in the comments below.